Welcome to What Do You Want to Do, the show that will hopefully help you figure out what you want to do in life or reconnect you to what you love doing. Each show has a guest who is doing what they want to do, whether it's in their career or in addition to their regular job. Most importantly, we want to help you realize that no matter your age, you too can do what you want to do if you have the will to do it. Now here's your host, Leonard Kaplan.
Welcome to another week of What Do You Want to Do? And this week I've been waiting for a long time because I enjoy working with him. He's a great guy. Fun hanging out with him in Missouri. The one and only time I was in Missouri with the whole crew. Jason Brasier, the director, producer, writer. How are you, Jason?
I'm good, Leonard. How are you, man? Thanks for having me.
I'm great. I'm glad to have you. I've seen a lot of your films, and I want to get to talking about them all, but let's start with how you came to be a director and a filmmaker and putting it all on the line, as you always do with your filmmaking, because you have a wife and a daughter, and I don't know how you do it. And you teach too.
Well, it's a very long story, and I'll try to make it short, but essentially I've just always been a storyteller since I was a kid. I love movies. I got involved in theater when I was in high school, and enjoyed doing theater, still do when I can from time to time, and just kind of transitioned to film because that's what I was really interested in. And I just started making movies in high school and kind of made this deal with myself that if I enjoyed making it, I just need to keep doing it because I can only get better if I just keep working at it. And that's pretty much what I did. I just kind of fell in love with the visual storytelling process. And, I did my first, I did a slew of little short films in high school, and two of them are available. Well, one of them is available online on my YouTube channel. And then I did my first Western. It was an hour-long Western called The Moneymaker when I was a freshman in college. And I look back at that and I think, man, I was crazy. I just wanted to do something that I hadn't done. And I wanted to do a period piece because some of my favorite movies were Westerns or period pieces in general. And I wanted to try to do something that took me back in time. And we filmed on this 17,000 acre ranch, and it was just gorgeous. It had these buildings that were still standing from the early 1900s. The blacksmith shop was an actual blacksmith shop that was still standing. And the blacksmith, apparently I was told, had just left, like in 1905, just left everything and went somewhere else. And it was just on this beautiful place. We camped out there and filmed. And, for my first attempt at making a film, it's still difficult. It's, when you've watched, you've learned so much since then. It's hard to watch, but at the same time, I still get enjoyment out of just us going out and just trying to do something crazy and fun. And we had a premiere, and we sold out my hometown theater, the Star Theater in Willow Springs. Shout out to them because I've done every one of my plays I did when I was younger was there, and I've shown every film. Actually, I've actually shown every production I have ever made in that theater on their screen, and up until a couple of years ago. So I need to catch up with them. But I just fell in love with the process and just knew that's what I wanted to do. Went to Missouri State University, and what I decided to do instead of just getting a straight up film degree, I got a mass media production degree, which encompassed not just only film, but also journalism, which I love documentaries as well. So it was a nice fit. And I felt it made me more dynamic and looking for jobs. I just wouldn't have just a film thing. I could also do other technical aspects and some journalistic endeavors if I wanted to. So, that was pretty much that. And then I just kind of in college sit back and watched other people direct because I wasn't comfortable with it yet. I was okay with producing and writing at the time. I knew I wanted to direct, but I wanted to watch and learn and see how other people were doing things before I really dove in. And then that's when I did Drift or Broken Road, my first web series, is when I really got back into directing after college and just, never looked back.
Now, what did your parents think of your ambition when you were still in high school?
Oh man, my mom and dad knew I was a dreamer. They knew they were supportive, but coming from a small town, a lot of people when they heard, "Yo, you want to do filmmaking," but what they didn't understand that filmmaking encompassed was not just films. I could do documentaries, I could do commercials, and I even kind of knew that stuff with the web was going to get popular because in 2004, when I was a senior in high school, I saw a movie online called Fight Circle. I don't know if it's up anymore, but it was the first martial arts film that was like online. And I remember thinking, man, you could really do something with this if you did like a sitcom or a TV show in this style. And I just kind of knew things were going that way. But when I got to college, some people were like, oh, we don't want to do YouTube videos. I'm like, no, I want to do like a short form television series. And then it wasn't, nobody hopped on that train until after the writer's strike that about 08. And that's when all these filmmakers and Joss Whedon and all those guys and Will Ferrell were all making web content. And people were like, oh, this is entertaining and really fun. And that's when that took off. And I'm stubborn too. My parents will tell you that. They knew that I wasn't going to stop. And so I found where I could go to college at, even though our guidance counselor in high school was trying, she almost sent me to New York Film Academy, which I was fine with going to, nothing wrong with that. But I was like, I feel like there's something closer. I just don't, I feel like she wasn't doing her job. Sorry. She hears this, I'm sorry. But she's like, there's no places here near and around here that do that. And I pulled up Missouri State University and I pulled up their entire film program and showed it to her. And she got mad that I had found this and she hadn't. And
you embarrassed her. You embarrassed her. Her incompetence, I guess.
I guess. But, I was kind of like, I was like, I can't be the only person, not just in, maybe Willow, I don't know. There's a few people I know now that have gone to do some filmmaking since then, from my hometown. And it was just like, I don't know if I was the first one for her or something, and just kind of threw it for a loop. I don't know. And I took it to my parents and said, hey, I found where I could go close by, and which ended up, everything just, it was all about timing. Timing worked out. Got engaged and December of 05, yeah. And no, we got no, I better take that back on the engagement part, because I remember my wife will give me a hard time because we were engaged for we were engaged for quite a while, and we were finally married December 17th of 05. And she had she finished up her schooling for becoming a teacher, and then we transferred up to Springfield, and I was able to continue my film program there. And that's where we've been ever since. And she's now a school counselor, and I have a 13-year-old as of next month, our daughter. And then I've done everything since, a lot of documentary work, lots of stuff that lately. Been working on a cool little documentary series called My Ozarks that I've been getting hired to direct, and I've been working with Quentin Huckabee on those. He's my right-hand man when it comes to a lot of the film stuff, and whenever I can bring him in and stuff and pay him to do what he does best, I do it. And so My Ozarks has been a lot of fun to do. I've finally finished Flying Greek, which is a wrestling documentary that Medusa narrates. And now I'm just trying to catch up on one small project that got derailed because of COVID, and then I'm going to continue working on the Medusa documentary.
And that's the one that I was out in Missouri for with you guys, right?
Yeah. It was, and
the
it's
same one.
Yeah, it's taken a while just because I'm looking at the tape. I got tapes here. I've just been going through and just trying to make notes on what's on each tape, and basically trying to figure out what stuff I want to digitize to and use to help tell her story, and together with what we've already filmed, and then to start putting some stuff together. And then once it finally gets put together, we'll say, okay, we need to probably do a couple more days of filming, and then we'll figure that out from there. But I'm just trying to piece together everything that we have, what we shot originally and what we didn't use, on top of just these mountains of tapes that I've got sitting here that she gave me, and some very funny.
Those were in my house for many years. Those tapes.
Yes. Did you find the music video? She's gonna kill me.
The music video? No, I did not. They were all in that bag. I didn't really have a chance to go through them all.
I discovered a music video of her singing.
I wish I saw that. I wish I saw it.
I keep telling her we're going to use it. She keeps telling me no. And I'm like, oh, we have to use it. We have to use it. It's so pure, beautiful 80s. It's just, it's just quintessential 80s. I found a video. I took a video home last Thanksgiving that had the label Sting on it. And I was hoping it had Sting on it. It didn't, but it had the music video. She's going to kill me for even saying something about the music video, but it's awesome. Like, just being able to see some of these matches that haven't been seen in years, or just these videos. It's not just as a filmmaker, but as a wrestling fan. I mean, I'm just enthralled. In fact, I have to kind of make sure I don't get lost in it, because I'm, as a fan, because I need to take my notes and figure out what I want to use. And so I know I have a pile of tapes of ones that I want to use versus ones that really don't have anything that we could use. And I'm excited to start officially really diving into it. It's just, a lot of stuff's just happened in the last couple of years with COVID. And I mean, that's what pushed off Flying Freak finishing up, and finally in the final part with that. So I'm excited to get that released as well, and just, keep plowing forward as much as I can between everything else.
You kept yourself quite busy during COVID. In fact, there are at least a couple of films that you made that were very self-reflective and kind of a peek into your mind about what you were going through, I think, personally, correct?
Yes, and still going through. It's very experimental film really saved me, because it was, 2020 affected us all so differently. I mean, sure. It did. It affected me in a way that I wasn't really prepared for, and didn't really realize till later. But, everything was just, going great. I had finally gotten everything figured out with production stuff, had stuff booked, and then I was going to get ready to start my substitute teaching again, which is what I did between video gigs when things were slow. And I walked out of PenMac, and that's when all the schools got shut down. And then all within the next 2 days, everything I had booked out through December were just gone. All my broadcast gigs. I was lucky in the fact that I got to finish a couple of client projects, and those paid me very well. But I had to use every ounce of those things to survive. And, there was even this sort of denial period, because everything happened so fast with COVID in Southwest Missouri that it was kind of a weird time. And I wouldn't let the girls go out. I would go out to go shopping for them and go get stuff, because I didn't want to run into, I didn't know how people were going to be acting. They act crazy, whatever. Around here, when there's a snowstorm coming, people act crazy and go get stuff, so I didn't know how they were going to be acting with this. So I didn't want to put them in any danger and all that. And so going in and seeing all the food that was gone, and the toilet paper. Oh my gosh, the toilet paper shortage.
We had that too.
That was, it's just so weird. And I just remember thinking at one point while I was in the middle of Walmart, just going, this is really crazy. It's one thing when you see it on TV and people talk about it, but when it finally gets to you and you see how it's starting to affect all the stuff around you, it really slowly can eat at you. And
Yeah.
there's this part of you that wants to be like, man, I wish I should have been prepared, but nobody could have been prepared for that. And I know that, but it's just kind of like, you still have this, at least for me, in the back of my mind is like, Jiminy, what could I have done better to be prepared, you know? And we just, you know, being new parents, because we had adopted our daughter a couple of years ago and all that, it was a difficult time to be a parent, because all the kids, you know, when they think of something catastrophic, they're literally like, I don't see anything outside.
Yeah.
And it's like trying to explain that to kids is difficult. And even finding masks around here when it first started happening, they had no masks anywhere. So I didn't have a mask for a while. So I
No
was
kidding.
scared. Yeah.
Wow.
And so I would go, and I mean, I became very careful with what I touched and how you know, and things like that. Very germophobic, you had to almost be, because I didn't have a mask and I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
Finally, they started putting masks out and I was able to get one. But the effect it started having on me was weird, because I started being really, you know, depressed, but it wasn't like I had been before, like I've dealt with. And so I really wasn't sure what it was. And so with all the time on my hands, I just kind of decided I'm going to dive into a genre of film I've never really had time to study, because now I have the time. And that was the experimental film genre. And bought David Lynch's Eraserhead to kick it off, and I just dove head first. And these were films that I probably have watched some during college and didn't really get, but just a few years ago, I started really getting into abstract art. Mm-hmm. And going back and watching some of these films, like even Louis Buñuel's films. I love Louis Buñuel. And then I discovered Stan Brakhage, who all he was known for he was an experimental filmmaker. But one of his things he was known for was taking film and literally painting on it, like frame by frame. And then he would go and he would project those at art galleries. And I was just fascinated by it. And then from there, went down the rabbit hole even more and discovered Maya Deren. And Maya Deren actually was one of the influences for David Lynch. And then I went back and studied Guy Maddin. I love Guy Maddin. I have so much respect for Guy Maddin, but I just love his films because they're just so different, because I love old style film, and he really does that old style of filmmaking. And I just get entranced by it. I always have been. And from there, I just went down even further and went to Cronenberg, and I just, you know, the Criterion Collection got a lot of my attention. So from there, at the beginning of quarantine, it was right when it was just right as we were getting ready to have the stay-at-home order, and I called Quentin up, and I had written this poem, because I've done poetry all my life, and so I was getting lost in my poetry, and I watched this Guy Maddin film called Nightmare, and the main character just narrates the whole story, but it was a fascinating short film. Love it. And it got me thinking about this poem I had written. It was very self-reflective, and it was called Haunted. And I was like, man, I could narrate this and be in it. And if I could figure out a way to get Quentin over here, if he was comfortable, you know, I could film something in a day and have my daughter help me and my wife and make it kind of a family deal and have fun with it, just to give us something to do. And I called Quentin up, and he was bored and wanted to do something creative. And I said, well, do you feel comfortable? And we talked to each other, and we had no fevers or anything. And this is right. I mean, gosh, it was right at the very beginning, before things even got bad. And so if it had been like a few weeks later, we probably wouldn't have done it. But we just found a day, and he came over, and we filmed all day. And I narrated this poem, and it was always there in the dark. It was very cathartic. And because it was about my OCDs I had as a kid. I still have them every now and then. They flare up. But I was able to really talk with my wife, and I found out the trigger for it was religion, because as a child I had been told by people at church, not my parents or my family, but people at the church, that more than once, that basically if my next thought or breath wasn't for God, I was essentially sinning. My brain as a kid
Wow.
interpreted that as holy crap, I wasn't thinking about, I'm so, I started praying, and it became a repetitiveness. And then that just kind of snowballed into other things, checking the door and all these, and it just did that to me.
How old were you then?
Well, when I got told that stuff, I was probably around 10 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then, by the age of 15 is when I really started to have these things. And so the poem was my way of talking about it to people, because if I talked to about it in person, they didn't really like it, because people would say, well, it's not the church's fault, it's the people's fault. And I'm like, well, don't the people make up the church? But I'm not, and I said I get what they're trying to say. I know it wasn't everybody, I get that, but it's just kind of like Pavlov's dog. Whenever he would do the bell and he would feed him, and then when he saliva, it kind of became that for me with church, and where I wouldn't go to church for a while and I'd feel amazing. My OCD would, and then if I stepped into a church and there were certain trigger words or things that were said, I would have they would just go heightened. And it's not like that anymore. I've been able to really work through that. But the film Haunted was a way of manifesting those OCD, manifested as ghosts, and how we did that.
So you probably your own therapist in a way, because making those films got you to express what you were thinking without offending those people who don't want to talk about things like that directly. You got it out through the film, and that's probably why you're over it.
Yeah, well, I still deal with it, but I'm very much over that. But I'm trying to show people that you can get them under control.
Yeah.
But, and it's kind of funny you said the therapist thing, which I'm not a therapist. My wife's a counselor, but that helps me a little bit. But I started a hashtag about 6 months ago called Film is Therapy. And a lot of my, even Haunted is kind of a subgenre that I discovered called cinematic poetry, where people will read their poems and they'll edit something to it. And sometimes it's very avant-garde, which is fine. But for me, I wanted to have symbolism and really even have some sort of symbolism, even if it was abstract in a way. And so that's why I used a lot of old school silent film to help cut to those different things, to really tell that. And there are certain scenes in Haunted where I'm in a dream sequence, and it shows me reading a Bible, but it's upside down, which is kind of a visual cue of how people told me things was upside down than for what it was. And that translated into me doing another film called The Gospel of Mankind, which that film dealt more with the socio-political climate and how it was mixing with religion, which really I felt was not a good thing. And I didn't know how to express it verbally, without making people just got mad. And so I thought, well, I can have a civilized conversation with somebody. I'm not saying that, but sometimes it was more easy for me to show than tell.
Sure.
So I did The Gospel of Mankind, but I really tried to do something that was the complete opposite of anything I'd ever done before. And so whenever my instinct would go, oh, do this shot, I would automatically say, no, I want to do different. I want to make this because I guess before this, I was kind of felt like I was getting stagnant in my film style a little bit, and it was boring me, and I wanted to do new things. And so experimental film really helped me challenge that and to look at things a little differently. And so Gospel of Mankind's a very, very weird film. It's
Yeah.
literally about a guy finding a gospel, and actually, there it is right there. You can see it, the prop we used.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, and he's reading from it, and it fell from the heavens. There's no, that's the opening shot. It just falls from the heavens and lands there. He's listening to a podcast. He's literally the last man on earth. That's what I call him in the craze. That's what he's credited as. And I do a little thing at the beginning where we talk about space travel, which I have no problems with exploring and things like that. But I try to make a point that, this whole thing with SpaceX and Jeffrey Bezos and his Blue Origin stuff,
Yeah.
that's not gonna be for anybody, any normal person. The only people that are going to be able to go do that stuff are going to be people
Right.
who are millionaires.
Well, right now, yes.
Yes, and it's going to be like that for a long, long time, because it's, they're basically wanting to make resorts on the moon. It's not going to be like it's going to be over quite a while before they even have housing, if you will,
Yeah.
up there for things. But I make a good point at the beginning of the film about that. It's just a little anecdote, and we move on from it. But as he's reading from it, basically, I used experimental film and surrealism and being abstract to visually have mankind's hubris play out
Mm-hmm.
as he's reading this whole thing. And I'm very proud of that. Like, we shot that in a day, and I edited it in a day. I was
Right.
just that excited to get it out of my head and
Sure.
put it out there. And there are certain scenes that are very absurd, but I did it on purpose because I wanted to have people interpret certain scenes differently. I knew what they meant to me, but certain scenes I wanted to see what people would say. And I got that reaction from people. Like, some people would interpret one way, something completely different than how somebody else did. But that's what I wanted. I was trying to create talk about it and have people talk. So that was kind of what my goal was with it. It is a very weird film, though. It has not gotten to any festivals, which I'm not saying it should, but it's been rejected by every festival I sent it to, because I think that,
Yeah.
I think it's just so different. But that kind of went into me learning about what was bothering me with depression after I had my car wreck in January, and the anxiety that built from that. And basically, the film is therapy thing went into this short film with called Side Effects May Vary. And it was just me trying to verbalize poetically and visualize how depression and anxiety felt to me and looked.
Now,
And
the feelings that you had back at the church when you were a kid led up to these abstract films, combined with the COVID and other stuff you were going through. Had you talked to your parents at the time that first began to strike you, do you think you still would have made those films?
I don't know, because I didn't know that's what I was going through at that
Yeah.
time. When I was younger, I didn't know any better. Because to me, that's what the religion was teaching me, and that's how I needed to live. I needed to live in fear.
Wow.
And that's how that's at least how my young mind interpreted it. But it's hard when more than one person told you. And this is word for word what I was told. If your next breath and next thought is not for God, you're essentially sinning.
So why didn't you talk to your parents about that? That's the first thing I would have done.
Well, because I was at church, and for me, church was supposed to be a safe place, and a place where stuff like words like that, you kind of, the whole respect your elders thing. And it was older people in the church telling me things. And if I questioned things, that's when I got in trouble, or I was like, you can't do that. And, it was just a very weird time. Like, I didn't think at the time that it was what they were telling me was wrong, because I didn't know.